Hello, world. Welcome to 21st Century Polymath. This is the 21st Century channel of knowledge and science and arts. And today we are on our usual etymology program. Of course, before we go any further, we want to say Happy New Year to everybody out there. The whole world has entered into January, the first month of the year 2019, and this is the last year that bears the last year of the decade from 2010 to 2019, because from 2020 we'll enter a new decade. So we have finished the second decade of this 21st century, and in 2020 we'll enter into the third decade. So I hope you have had decades, 220 years, 210 years of drama. Of course, it has been a very eventful decade, 2 decades from 2000 till 2019, and many things have happened. You know, the birth of Facebook, the birth of Twitter, the birth of Instagram, the birth of WhatsApp, and all of these things, they were all born in these 2 decades that have passed. And now we are on for takeoff. From 2020, we're going to be on for takeoff because we have already got the applications, and now we're ready to take the century on. So today we're looking at a very interesting word. I was reading something in the Bible. You know, I read every book in the world that I can read, and one of them is the Bible. I take time to read it, and of course, not just, you know, the Bible, you don't just read it for spiritual issues. You can read it for educational reasons, and I was reading for educational reasons much as even you can read it for spiritual. And I was very interested by a word I saw that was actually used in the Bible as a verb and not like a noun, and that's the word surname. And in the King James version of the Bible, they use the verb surname, and it made me think about the word in English, what it means, because this is not a theological channel, we will not talk about the theological implication of using the word surname, but we will only talk about the what do you call it, the English word. Etymology means to understand the meaning of a word, and I'm very happy with the word meaning, because there's a friend of mine who has made me ask myself. You know, he always asks. He's a more like a philosopher, and he's always asking, what is the meaning of life? The meaning. And so etymology is the study of the meaning of a word, because words have meaning. Language, in fact, when you go deep in language or linguistics, you will study how a word came to being. And so you've got to understand this, that the words are created out of other actions, and that's what you're going to see with this word surname. So, you know, when you say, what's the meaning of life? You know, why are we living? Many people do not know, but for me, the meaning of life, and I'm not talking about etymology, I'm now talking about the meaning of life, is life. We are supposed to come. It's like, I think how I take my life to be, the meaning of my life is, I'm in the world to make it a better place, to know things, and to study and to enjoy life, you know, to enjoy the world. That is what I would say for me is the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to know, knowledge. And knowledge is, we have the sensory gates to know things. The eye gate, the mouth, the ear gate, the and all of these orifices, you know, and then of course you have everything. The skin is also a sensory gate. It's the biggest sensory gate in the body. So I believe, for me personally, the meaning of life for me is life where I live to know. And whatever I get, the knowledge I get, I use it to make my life better, and I use it to take myself higher. That's why we go to school. You know, we go to school so that we can improve our lives. And going to school is to get knowledge. And that's why you're taught language, you know, you're taught how to speak, you're taught how to walk, you're taught how to talk, you're taught how to eat. We're always being taught, we are always learning, because it is through knowledge you'll be able to do many things in the world. So that tells you that the meaning of life is actually to know. And I'm very happy. There are very many things to know in the world. And that's why we have these channels. It's to encourage and to teach people to know. And the more you know, the more power you have. And the more power you have, the more life you have. All right. Now, let's get to etymology, which is to know the meaning of a word. Now, we want to know the meaning of the word surname and its origin. Actually, it's not just knowing the meaning, but it's to know, because that's a dictionary, it is to know the construction of the word. So surname is from the 13th, around the 12th century, not 12th century, but the 14th century, because when it's 14th century, you're talking about the 1300, between the year 1300 to 1400. Just like the year 2000 to 2100 is the 21st century. So when you count the century, it's ahead by one, because you cannot start counting the century when there's no century that has taken place. So surname is a name, title, or epithet added to a person's name, and it comes from sur, which is above, and this is from Latin super, and then plus name, which is modeled on the Anglo-French surname, and is an early 14th century, as I said. Variant of the old French Surname, from sur over plus nom, name, because name is nom is name, and so it was called a family name from 14th century. Now, I like the history. An old English word for this was phreonama, literally free name, meaning family name, is first found late in the 14th century. So the old English word for surname was phreonama, which meant a free name. And this is very important. Why did they use the word free name? It's because slavery was still a commonplace activity in the ancient world. Of course, this was the Middle Ages, so the world was less ancient. It was trying to become modern, but it was still ancient. And so free name, and this is where you also got in, if you've been reading about land and inheritance, this is where you get the free name, freehold, what you call freehold tenure. Freehold tenure means a family owns land. So when you are in a family, you are a free person. That is what this is saying. Phreonama, literally free name, it's equals to family name. So what does that mean? To be in a family is to be a free person. If you don't have a family, 80% you are not a free person. This is why most slaves never had families. most slaves, of course, I'm not talking about the slaves in America and the Americas, because those ones, they used to be, sometimes you enslave them together with their families, but even there were very many cases of slaves not staying with their family members because you were auctioned at the slave auction. So they can pick your father, but they don't pick you. So your father is taken to another farm. Then another person comes and picks you and doesn't pick your sister. So your sister remains in the auction market. So very many slave families in America and in the Americas are scattered. Yes, they are scattered because when the auctions used to take place, you did not go with a family. You only picked a slave according to the specification you needed from that slave. Like if you wanted a woman who can work on the field, you go with her even if she has children, because you may not want the children, you just want that woman who can do the work on the field, or the man who can be a builder. Because people think slaves were only working on the field. Some slaves were for the houses, some slaves were for, it was slave diversity, they were also for building, they were also for all of these different works. So because of these different works, slaves could not stay in their families. That's why if you had a family, if you are in a family, you acquired the family name and you are a free person. And I'm saying this because in England, where this name, now you're seeing Surname, England had a system called the freehold. Freehold means the land is owned by the family and it's passed down by the family. So what does this tell you? It tells you a family is a free unit. Because in a family, you're not a slave. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that in a family, you are a free man. You're a free person. You are not a slave of anybody in the family. And whenever you do work in the family, it's not slavery. It's because you are in the family. You are already a free person. Slavery is whereby you are not related to anybody in that unit by blood, and you work in that unit and they don't pay you anything. That's where you are a slave, because you're not connected to them by blood, but you're working for them and in their unit, in their space, and they don't pay you. That is what you call, that is slavery. Because for you not to be a slave, you have to be related to the person by blood, and you have to work within that person's territory for you not to be a slave. This is why children, sons and daughters, can work for their parents, sometimes even for free. You do housework, you can clean up somewhere, and they won't pay you, because in any case, you're still going to eat in the house with them. So you're not necessarily a slave. However, sometimes these days, parents can give their children some token after they've done some very great work. But generally, there is no slavery when you are working in your family space, because you are a free person. Yes, because you're born of that family. The blood, I used to tell somebody, you cannot disown your children. They are yours. They are yours. They are your blood. You can't disown your blood. It's suicidal that when you disown your blood. But you can disown a slave. You can disown a worker, because the worker is not related to you in any way. No blood and no sexual relations as well. It depends. If you have a sex slave, like what happens in some areas that have sex slaves, then you are used. Then you have a relation, and therefore you have a bond with the slave owner. But generally, there is no connection between the slave and the slave owner, because unless you've had sex with the slave owner has had sex with the slave owner. But if there is no sex, then there is no relation, and therefore the slave can be disowned. That's why the title disownment is it is only for those who have hired people. So let's go on. Hereditary surnames existed among Norman nobility in England in early 12th century. Among the common people, they began to be used 13th century increasingly frequently. Is the term surname was only for nobles. So in the 12th century, nobles had surnames, but the common people did not have surnames until the 13th century. So what does this tell you? The history of the word surname, which we are studying, is that surnames belonged to only rich people, to the nobles, and not to the common people. But because common people were also free people, they also started possessing surnames, and this became universal by the end of the 14th century. So the process was later in the north of England than the south, and the verb is attested from the 15th tense, and now there's a related word, is the surnamed. So this is the picture of the word surname, and we want to finish with the verb, the surnamed. Okay, so basically that is what a surname is. It is a name above all names, and is a family name. It is also called family name, and as we said, a free name. And when you are part of a family, you are a free person. So that is the word for today for our etymology. And being a new year, we're going to do very many things here on 21st Century Polymath, as we study not only words, but also study the history and the origins of these words that we use in English. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today on 21st Century Polymath.